The sun hung low in the Atlanta skyline, casting a golden hue over the glass towers that punctuated the city. Inside one of those towers, the atmosphere was charged with the hum of ambition and the clatter of keyboards. Vivian Caldwell sat in her office, a sleek space adorned with contemporary art that spoke to her refined taste. She leaned back in her plush chair, her fingers intertwined as she stared out at the bustling streets below. Vivian had always been comfortable in this world, an elite financial firm where the stakes were high and the rewards even higher. But as she watched the world move past her window, a familiar ache settled in her chest. Despite her success, a gnawing loneliness lingered. The death of her husband had left an irreplaceable void, one that her wealth and status could not fill. As she prepared for her next big meeting, she felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her like a heavy cloak. Ms. Caldwell, the voice of Evelyn Carter, her colleague and head of the firm, interrupted her reverie. Evelyn was a force to be reckoned with, sharp, ambitious, and unyielding. Today, her tailored suit seemed to radiate authority as she entered Vivian's office, her brown eyes piercing through the cool air. "Evelyn," Vivian greeted, offering a small smile. "What's on your mind?" "We need to talk about the upcoming meeting with the board of directors," Evelyn said, pacing the room with her usual intensity. "They're expecting us to present a new strategy for increasing our market share. We need something innovative, something that stands out." Vivian nodded, her mind racing. She had been thinking about this meeting for weeks, strategizing ways to break through the glass ceiling that had confined her and her vision. But there was more than just profit margins at stake. There was a chance to challenge the outdated perspectives that suffocated diversity within their firm. "I know we're under pressure," Vivian began, an idea forming. "What if we invited someone from outside our usual circle? Someone who can provide a fresh perspective?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet skeptical. "Who do you have in mind?" Vivian's gaze shifted to the window, where she spotted Marcus Johnson, the janitor of their building. He was sweeping the sidewalk, his tall frame moving with purpose. She remembered their brief interactions, his warm smile, the way he always took the time to chat, even on his busiest days. He had an energy that seemed to challenge the mundane reality of their corporate world. "What about Marcus?" Vivian suggested, surprising even herself. "He's intelligent and observant. He sees the world from a different angle. He might offer insights we've overlooked." Evelyn crossed her arms, contemplating the idea. "You want to bring a janitor to a board meeting? That's bold, Vivian. But do you really think he has anything to contribute?" "More than we might realize," Vivian insisted, the words spilling out before she could second-guess herself. "He's lived experiences we can't even begin to comprehend. This could be our chance to break the mold." Evelyn studied her for a moment, the tension in the room palpable. "If you're serious about this, you need to convince the board. They're not exactly open to unconventional ideas." Vivian's heart raced at the thought. This was a risk, one that could either catapult her into a new realm of possibility or leave her vulnerable to backlash. But something inside her felt compelled to take the leap. She wanted to challenge the status quo, to create a space where voices like Marcus's could be heard. After a moment, Evelyn nodded. "All right, let's see how this goes. But prepare yourself for resistance. You need to have your facts straight to justify this decision." Vivian felt a surge of determination. "I will. Thank you, Evelyn." As Evelyn left, Vivian's mind swirled with possibilities. She composed herself and stood up, smoothing her designer dress before heading out of her office. The bustling floor of the firm greeted her with its familiar chaos, a stark contrast to the quiet contemplation of her office. She navigated through clusters of colleagues, their conversations blending into a symphony of ambition and urgency. When she reached the lobby, she spotted Marcus leaning against a mop, taking a brief respite. His warm smile lit up the space, and Vivian felt a flutter of excitement mixed with apprehension. This was as she was about to step into uncharted territory. "Marcus," she called, her voice bright against the background noise. He turned, surprise flickering across his features as he straightened up. "Miss Caldwell, everything all right?" "Yes, I'm fine. I wanted to talk to you about something important." She gestured for him to join her, stepping aside to find a quieter corner near the entrance. "Can we chat for a moment?" "Sure. What's going on?" Marcus asked, His curiosity piqued. Vivian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision. "I have a meeting with the board of directors next week, and I'd like to invite you to join us." His brows knit together in confusion. "Me? At a board meeting? Yes. I believe your perspective could be invaluable," she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions within her. "I know this is unconventional, but I want to challenge the norms of our firm to bring in diverse viewpoints." "I believe you can help." Marcus looked taken aback, processing her words. "I appreciate that, but I'm just a janitor." "I don't know if I can, Marcus. You have insights that we need," she interjected gently. "You understand the struggles and triumphs of the community in ways we can't. Your voice matters." His hesitation lingered in the air, and Vivian could see the internal battle playing out on his face. Finally, he let out a slow breath. "Okay, I'll do it. But I'm not sure what I can bring to the table." Vivian smiled, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "That's the beauty of it. You'll be surprised at what you can offer. Together, we can make a difference." As they stood there, a sense of camaraderie began to form, bridging the gap between their worlds. Vivian knew this was just the beginning of a journey filled with challenges, but she felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Marcus by her side, perhaps they could dismantle the barriers that had held them both captive for far too long. "Let's start preparing," she said, her voice firm with conviction. "We have a lot of work to do before the meeting," and just like that, the stage was set for a confrontation not only with the corporate giants in the room, but with the internal conflicts that both she and Marcus would face as they ventured into uncharted territory. The air in Vivian's office felt charged with anticipation as she sat across from Marcus on the plush sofa, the city's skyline shimmering through the expansive glass windows. The golden light of late afternoon spilled into the room, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. Vivian could sense Marcus's unease. He fidgeted with his hands, his brow furrowed as he stared at the floor, lost in thought. "Marcus," Vivian said gently, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "I know this is a big ask, and it might feel overwhelming, but I believe in your voice." He looked up, meeting her gaze for the first time, and she saw a flicker of determination beneath the uncertainty. "I appreciate that you think I have something to offer, Miss Caldwell, but I'm just a janitor. I've never been in a board meeting before. I don't know how to navigate that world." Vivian leaned forward, her expression earnest. "You have life experiences that the people in that room don't. You see things from a perspective they might never understand. The corporate world often overlooks those voices, but they're crucial for real change." Marcus took a deep breath, absorbing her words. "I've seen a lot in my neighborhood, things that don't get talked about in places like this." He gestured around the office, his voice gaining strength. "But I don't want to be the token guy they bring in to check a box. I want to make sure my words mean something." Vivian nodded, understanding his hesitation. "I want to assure you that this isn't about checking boxes. It's about creating a dialogue that can spark real change. And yes, you'll face skepticism, but your insights could challenge their assumptions. You might just shake them awake." Marcus's expression softened, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Okay, I'll do my best, but I really need to understand what I can contribute." "What do you want me to say?" Vivian smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "Let's start by discussing your experiences. What have you noticed about how people perceive their environments? What changes do you think could benefit our community, and what barriers do you see?" He paused for a moment, clearly thinking. "For starters, I see a lot of people struggling just to get by. They work hard, but it feels like the odds are stacked against them. Whether it's systemic racism or economic inequality, it all adds up. People are frustrated, and that frustration often leads to a lack of trust in institutions, including businesses." Vivian nodded vigorously. "Exactly. That's the kind of insight that needs to be heard. You can articulate the disconnect between the corporate world and the communities it affects." Marcus straightened, his confidence visibly building. "I think it's about understanding that people want to feel valued. If businesses can show they care about the community, not just profit, it could change everything. People respond to authenticity." Vivian felt a spark of excitement. "Yes, that's powerful." We can frame our presentation around that idea how embracing authenticity and community engagement can lead to both social and economic benefits. As they brainstormed, the conversation flowed with increasing ease. Marcus shared stories about his childhood in Old Fourth Ward, the gentrification that had reshaped his neighborhood, and the resilience of its residents. Vivian listened intently, her mind racing with ideas on how to weave these narratives into their presentation. Let's create a narrative that highlights real people and their stories, Vivian suggested. We can bring in statistics to support your points, but we also need to humanize the data. People connect with stories. Yeah, Marcus agreed, his enthusiasm growing. I can talk about my family, the sacrifices my parents made, and how that shaped who I am today. It's not just numbers, it's about real lives and struggles. Vivian's heart swelled with pride for him. That's it. Your story is compelling and relatable. We can emphasize how a company's actions impact individuals on a personal level. This isn't just business, it's about community. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow in the room, Vivian felt a sense of camaraderie solidifying between them. This was no longer just a corporate project. It felt like a partnership, a shared mission to challenge the boundaries that had long separated their worlds. Let's set some ground rules for our presentation, Vivian said, leaning back slightly. We need to be assertive, but respectful. We're here to create dialogue, not to confront or accuse. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I can do that. I want to challenge their thinking, but I don't want to come off as aggressive or disrespectful. It's important to find that balance. Exactly, Vivian replied, her voice steady. And remember, you're not alone in this. I'll be right there with you, supporting you every step of the way. With newfound determination, they mapped out their presentation, crafting a narrative that intertwined their stories and highlighted the power of collaboration. As they worked, the boundaries between their lives began to blur, and for the first time, Vivian saw Marcus not just as a janitor, but as a collaborator in a shared vision. Later that evening, as they wrapped up, Vivian felt a surge of optimism. We have a week to prepare, and I know we can make an impact, she said, her voice bright with conviction. We'll need to practice, refine our message, and anticipate questions from the board. Marcus looked at her, a mixture of excitement and apprehension in his eyes. I'm ready to dig deeper. I want to make sure my voice is heard, but I'm also nervous about how they'll react. Understandable, Vivian replied. But remember, your voice is valid and it matters. The board may be resistant, but change often starts with difficult conversations. We'll face it together. As they said their goodbyes for the evening, Vivian felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. She watched Marcus leave, his tall frame silhouetted against the fading light. He was stepping into a world that had never truly welcomed him, yet he was ready to challenge it. In the days leading up to the meeting, they would prepare, practice, and refine their message. Together, they would forge a bridge between their two worlds, each step bringing them closer to confronting the prejudices that had long dictated their lives. Vivian knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that real change was possible. And as she closed her office door behind her, she felt a renewed sense of hope, a belief that together, they could begin to dismantle the barriers that had held them captive for far too long. The day of the board meeting dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a warm glow across Atlanta. The city buzzed with life, but inside Vivian Caldwell's high-rise office, a different kind of energy crackled in the air. Vivian stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirrors, adjusting her tailored blazer, the reflection revealing the woman she had transformed into over the past few weeks. No longer just a wealthy widow, she was a champion for change, and today was the day she would prove it. Are you ready? Marcus's voice broke through her thoughts as she turned to see him standing by the door, his expression a mix of determination and anxiety. He wore a crisp white shirt, his pants pressed, and the new shoes he had bought for the occasion shone under the office lights. More than ready, Vivian replied, her heart pounding with excitement. She walked over to him, taking a moment to admire his effort to present himself. You look great, Marcus. Remember, today is about sharing our stories. He nodded, but she could see the doubt lingering in his eyes. I just hope they listen. I don't want to be dismissed. Vivian placed a reassuring hand on his arm. They will listen. You have something valuable to say, and I'll be right there with you. We've prepared for this, and we're going to make an impact. As they made their way to the conference room, the tension in the air thickened. The sleek, modern space was filled with the sharp scent of coffee, and the board members were already seated around a large, oval table. The room felt imposing, adorned with high-tech screens and minimalist decor, a stark contrast to the vibrant community Marcus represented. Vivian took a deep breath, silently reminding herself of their shared mission. "Just remember, we're in this together," she whispered to Marcus as they stepped through the glass doors. The board members glanced up, their expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Evelyn Carter sat at the head of the table, her gaze steady and encouraging as she gestured for them to take their seats. "Thank you for joining us, Vivian, Marcus," she said, her voice firm. "Today, we're looking forward to hearing your presentation on new strategies for community engagement." Vivian felt a surge of pride as she settled into her chair beside Marcus. She shot him a quick smile, and he returned it, though his hands fidgeted nervously on the table. "Let's begin," Evelyn continued, her eyes sweeping over the room. "Vivian, the floor is yours." Vivian stood, her heart racing as she faced the board. "Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. Today, we want to discuss how our firm can better engage with the communities we serve, particularly in light of the growing economic disparities and the need for authentic corporate responsibility." As she spoke, she felt the energy of the room shift. Some members leaned forward, interest piqued, while others exchanged glances that hinted at skepticism. She moved through her points, weaving statistics and anecdotes about community struggles into a narrative that highlighted the importance of connection and understanding. And while I could speak to the statistics, I believe it's essential to hear a voice that represents the community we're discussing, Vivian said, gesturing toward Marcus. "I'd like to introduce Marcus Johnson, who has lived these experiences and can share insights that will resonate far beyond numbers alone." Marcus stood, a mixture of fear and resolve flashing across his face. Vivian could sense the weight of the moment as he took a deep breath and stepped forward. She felt a surge of encouragement welling up within her, and she knew he could do this. "Thank you, Miss Caldwell," Marcus began, his voice steadying as he addressed the room. "Like many people in our community, I work hard every day, but there are obstacles that make it feel like we're fighting an uphill battle. I've seen families struggle to make ends meet, and many feel that their voices aren't heard." He paused, scanning the faces around the table. Some members appeared engaged, while others remained indifferent, arms crossed defensively. "For us, business isn't just about numbers. It's about trust. When a company shows it cares, it builds relationships that lead to loyalty." Vivian watched as Marcus spoke with increasing confidence, sharing personal stories about his upbringing in Old Fourth Ward, the impact of gentrification, and the resilience of his neighbors. His words painted a vivid picture of the struggles people faced, but also of the hope and determination that characterized his community. "People want to feel seen and valued," he continued passionately. "We want to know that our contributions matter. That's why I believe businesses should engage with the community, not just when it's convenient, but consistently. It's about creating genuine partnerships that uplift everyone involved." As he spoke, Vivian could feel the room's energy shift again. A few board members exchanged looks of surprise, their expressions softening. She sensed that they were beginning to understand the depth of Marcus's message. However, just as Marcus reached the conclusion of his presentation, a voice interrupted from the far end of the table. "With all due respect, Marcus, while your experiences are important, how do we know that this approach will actually yield results? We need to focus on profitability." The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air as Marcus's expression faltered. Vivian felt a surge of protectiveness for him. "That's precisely the point," she interjected, her voice rising slightly. "Investing in community engagement can lead to long-term loyalty and profitability. It's not about sacrificing one for the other. They can coexist." Evelyn jumped in, her authoritative tone cutting through the discomfort. "What we're discussing here today is not merely charity, it's a strategy for sustainable growth. The market is changing, and businesses that ignore these shifts will be left behind." The board members exchanged murmurs, some nodding in agreement while others remained unconvinced. Vivian sensed a divide forming, a resistance to the change they were advocating, but she refused to back down. "Let's consider the consequences of inaction," she pressed, her gaze sweeping the table. "Ignoring community issues will only lead to further division and distrust. We have a responsibility to be part of the solution, not the problem," Marcus, emboldened by her words, added, "If we can build genuine connections and show people that we care, we can create a loyal customer base that will drive our profits." It's not just about today, it's about the future. As the discussion continued, Vivian felt a flicker of hope amidst the challenges. They were making headway, slowly but surely. The board members began to engage, asking questions and expressing concerns, but it was clear that the seeds of change had been planted. As the meeting drew to a close, Evelyn summarized the discussion. "Thank you, Marcus and Vivian. Today, we've opened a dialogue that is critical for our firm's future. We need to explore these ideas further and consider actionable steps moving forward." With that, the meeting adjourned, and Vivian felt a rush of relief. They had faced the giants of the corporate world, and while there was still much work to be done, they had taken a significant step forward. As they left the conference room, Marcus turned to Vivian, a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief on his face. "Did that really just happen?" Vivian smiled, her heart swelling with pride for him. "Yes, it did. You spoke from the heart, and it made a difference." "We're just getting started." With renewed determination, they stepped out into the bustling streets of Atlanta, ready to continue their fight for change together. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over Atlanta, but inside Vivian Caldwell's office, the atmosphere felt heavy with uncertainty. The board meeting had ended, but the energy that had sparked hope moments earlier now simmered with tension. Vivian leaned back against her desk, her fingers drumming lightly against the polished surface as she replayed the meeting in her mind. "Can you believe it?" Marcus stood by the window, gazing out at the bustling streets below. His reflection mirrored the mix of exhilaration and doubt that swirled within him. "I never thought I'd get the chance to speak like that." Vivian smiled, recalling the fire in his voice as he shared his experiences. "You were incredible, Marcus. You challenged their perceptions and made them listen. Yeah, but did they really hear me?" He replied, turning to face her. "I couldn't shake the feeling that some of them were just waiting for me to finish so they could get back to business as usual." Vivian understood his frustration. Change takes time, and it won't happen overnight. But we've opened the door, and now it's up to us to keep pushing through it. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the moment settling over him. "I just hope I didn't make things worse. I want to be part of the solution, not just someone who shakes things up for the sake of it." "You did more than just shake things up," Vivian reassured him, her voice firm. "You introduced a perspective that they desperately need to hear. Remember, it's not just about today. It's about planting seeds for the future." As they stood in the office, the city's hum faded into the background, replaced by the sound of their thoughts. Vivian felt a surge of determination. They had taken a bold step, but the journey was far from over. "We need to strategize on how to follow up," she said, her mind racing with possibilities. "We can't let this moment slip away." Marcus nodded, his expression shifting from doubt to resolve. "What do you have in mind?" "First, we need to compile feedback from the board members," she suggested. "I'll reach out to Evelyn and see if she can provide insight into how they felt about our presentation. If we can address any concerns, we can strengthen our case moving forward." "Good idea," Marcus agreed. "And maybe we should prepare a more detailed proposal, something that outlines actionable steps for community engagement. If we can present a clear plan, it might help dispel their doubts." Vivian's heart raced at the prospect. "Yes, we can draw on the stories we shared, incorporate data that highlights the benefits of community investment, and outline specific initiatives we can undertake. Let's show them that we're serious about this." They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, their conversation flowing freely as they crafted a vision that intertwined their insights with practical strategies. Vivian felt a renewed sense of purpose as they mapped out their plan, the weight of the previous meeting gradually lifting. "Vivian," Marcus said, pausing mid-sentence, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," she replied, intrigued. What's your motivation for doing this? I mean, why take the risk of inviting me into this world? You could easily have kept things within your circle. Vivian took a deep breath, considering her answer. After my husband passed, I realized that I had been living in a bubble. I was so focused on maintaining our legacy that I overlooked the disparities right outside my window. I want to make a difference, to use my platform to elevate voices that are often silenced. Marcus studied her, his expression softening. That's admirable, but it must be hard to confront that reality. I know it's a lot to take on. It is, she admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. But I believe that real change starts with uncomfortable conversations. If I can use my privilege to create opportunities for others, then I owe it to myself and to my community to do so. A moment of silence hung between them, a shared understanding forming in the space. Marcus nodded, his jaw set with determination. I get that. I want to be part of this change, too. It's not just about me anymore. It's about everyone who feels overlooked. Vivian smiled at him, feeling a bond strengthen between them. Exactly. Together, we can bridge the gaps that have long divided us. Just then, her phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. Vivian glanced at the screen and saw Evelyn's name flashing. It's Evelyn, she said, her heart racing with anticipation. Let's see what she has to say. She answered the call, her voice steady yet hopeful. Evelyn, thank you for getting back to me. I wanted to discuss our meeting today and gather your thoughts on how we can move forward. Vivian, Evelyn's voice came through, firm and measured. I appreciate your initiative. The board was divided, to say the least. While some members recognized the potential in your ideas, others were more resistant. We need to address their concerns head-on if we want to gain their support. Vivian's stomach tightened. What specific concerns did they raise? Primarily about the feasibility of your proposed strategies, Evelyn explained. They want to see a clear plan with measurable outcomes. It's crucial that you outline how these initiatives will benefit our bottom line while also serving the community. Vivian exchanged a glance with Marcus, who leaned in, listening intently. I understand. We're already working on a detailed proposal, and we'll ensure it addresses those points. Good, Evelyn replied. I'll support you in any way I can, but be prepared for pushback. Change is often met with resistance, especially in a firm like ours. Thank you, Evelyn. Your support means a lot, Vivian said, feeling a surge of gratitude. We'll reach out soon with our proposal. As she hung up, Marcus looked at her, a mixture of hope and concern on his face. What did she say? They're open to our ideas, but we need to present a more concrete plan, Vivian explained. We have work to do, but we're not alone in this. Marcus nodded, determination lighting his features. Let's make it happen. We owe it to ourselves and to the community. With a renewed sense of purpose, they dove back into their planning, the challenges ahead no longer feeling insurmountable. Together, they would fight to transform their vision into reality, bridging the gaps that had long divided their worlds. As the day faded into evening, Vivian felt a spark of hope igniting within her. They were on the brink of something significant, a movement that could challenge the status quo and inspire others to join the fight for change. And with Marcus by her side, she knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead together. The following week dawned with a crispness in the air that signaled the changing seasons in Atlanta. Leaves were beginning to turn, hinting at the vibrant colors that would soon blanket the city. But inside Vivian Caldwell's office, the atmosphere was charged with a different kind of transformation. The walls that had once felt confining now seemed to pulse with possibility, echoing the ambitions of two unlikely allies determined to change the narrative. Vivian sat at her desk, reviewing the latest draft of their proposal. Pages were strewn about, filled with notes and diagrams that outlined their vision for community engagement. Each word held the weight of their shared hopes, and she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as she prepared to send it to Evelyn Carter. Okay, I think we're ready to send this off, Vivian announced, glancing up at Marcus, who was organizing their notes. He had become a familiar presence in her office, and his easy laughter had begun to fill the space with warmth. Let's make sure we have all the details right, Marcus replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. We can't afford to miss anything. The board will be scrutinizing every point. Vivian nodded, appreciating his diligence. "You're right. We need to anticipate their concerns and counter them with solid data. We can highlight the success stories from other companies that have embraced community engagement." As they continued to refine their proposal, the door swung open and Evelyn Carter stepped into the office. Her presence was commanding, and Vivian felt a rush of gratitude for the support she had provided thus far. "Good morning, both of you," Evelyn greeted, her eyes scanning the room before settling on the papers spread across the desk. "I see you've been busy." "Morning, Evelyn," Vivian replied, a smile breaking across her face. "We're finalizing our proposal for the board." Evelyn's expression shifted slightly, a mix of intrigue and caution. "I'm glad to see your commitment, but I need to prepare you for some pushback. Some board members are still skeptical about this approach." Marcus shifted in his chair, the weight of Evelyn's words settling heavily in the air. "What specifically are they concerned about?" he asked, his voice steady. "Primarily the financial implications," Evelyn explained, her voice measured. "They want to ensure that your strategies will not only benefit the community, but also align with our bottom line. They're concerned about the perceived risk of investing in initiatives that don't guarantee immediate returns." Vivian felt her heart sink momentarily, but isn't that the point? Change takes time, and the long-term benefits can far outweigh the initial costs. Evelyn nodded in agreement, but her expression remained serious. "I understand that, but we need to present a clear case that addresses those concerns. It's crucial to show how these initiatives can lead to new markets, customer loyalty, and ultimately profitability." Marcus leaned forward, determination etched on his features. "We can include case studies from companies that have successfully implemented similar strategies. We can show how they've seen positive financial outcomes as a result of their community engagement efforts." Evelyn's eyes lit up at his suggestion. "That's a great angle. If we can provide tangible examples, it may help alleviate some of their fears." Vivian felt a surge of hope. "All right, let's incorporate that into our proposal. We can also emphasize the moral imperative of investing in communities and how it aligns with our company's values." As they brainstormed, the conversation flowed easily, and Vivian felt a sense of camaraderie forming among them. This was more than just a professional endeavor. It was a collective mission grounded in a shared belief in the power of community. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as the door swung open again, this time revealing Thomas Grayson, a senior board member known for his conservative views. His presence felt like a storm cloud rolling into their sunny room, and Vivian's stomach twisted with unease. "Evelyn," he said, his tone curt as he stepped inside. "We need to discuss this community engagement initiative." Evelyn straightened, her demeanor shifting to one of caution. "Of course, Thomas. We were just talking about the proposal." Marcus shifted in his seat, the tension palpable as Thomas's gaze landed on him. "And who is this?" he asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. "This is Marcus Johnson," Vivian introduced, her voice steady despite the sudden chill in the room. "He's been instrumental in shaping our proposal." Thomas's expression hardened as he scrutinized Marcus. "A janitor? With all due respect, this is a board meeting, not a charity event. What makes you think your insights are relevant?" Vivian felt a surge of protectiveness from Marcus. "That's precisely the point, Thomas. Marcus's experiences provide a perspective that is often overlooked in our boardrooms. He understands the community's needs better than any of us. While I appreciate the sentiment," Thomas interjected sharply, "the board is primarily concerned with profitability and shareholder value. We simply can't afford distractions that don't align with our financial goals." Marcus met Thomas's gaze, his expression a mix of defiance and resolve. "It's not a distraction, it's an investment in our future. Communities that feel valued and heard become loyal customers. Ignoring them is a recipe for disaster." The tension in the room thickened, and Vivian could feel the air crackle with unspoken conflict. Thomas scoffed, crossing his arms. "And what evidence do you have to back that up?" "Anecdotes won't suffice in a boardroom filled with numbers." Evelyn stepped in, her voice firm. "We are working on a comprehensive proposal that will address these concerns, Thomas. We understand the need for data. We're gathering case studies to support our approach." "Case studies?" Thomas repeated, skepticism lacing his tone. "I want to see hard numbers, not feel-good stories. This is a business, not a nonprofit organization. Vivian took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. Thomas, change doesn't happen in isolation. We have to engage with the communities we impact. It's not just good ethics. It's good business. Good ethics don't pay the bills, he retorted, his gaze unwavering. Marcus stood his ground, his voice steady. But ignoring the community will ultimately cost us more in the long run. People want to support businesses that care about them. It's a two-way street. Evelyn glanced between Marcus and Thomas, sensing the tension escalating. Let's take a step back. We need to approach this collaboratively rather than combatively. Our goal is to present a united front to the board. Vivian nodded, her heart racing. We can find common ground. We're not looking to sacrifice profitability. We're advocating for a strategy that recognizes the interconnectedness of community and business. Thomas regarded them for a moment, and Vivian could see the wheels turning in his mind. Fine, he said finally, his tone begrudgingly accepting. But I expect to see solid data when you present this to the board. No more sentimentality. As he turned to leave, Vivian felt a mix of relief and frustration. Thank you for your input, Thomas, she said, her voice steady despite the tension that remained. Once he was gone, Evelyn exhaled slowly. Thank you for standing your ground, Marcus. You handled that well. Marcus nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes, but the weight of the encounter lingered heavily in the air. I just want to make sure our message is heard. I don't want to be dismissed because of my background. You won't be, Vivian assured him, determination hardening in her voice. We'll make sure we gather the data and present it in a way that resonates with them. As they prepared to dive back into their proposal, Vivian felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were facing adversaries, but they were also forging alliances. Together, they would challenge the status quo, and with each step, the bridge they were building became stronger. In that moment, Vivian realized that this was more than just a corporate initiative. It was a fight for justice, for recognition, and for a future where every voice mattered. And as long as they stood together, she believed they could weather any storm that lay ahead. The crisp morning air felt invigorating as Vivian Caldwell stepped out of her car, the sun casting a golden hue over the Atlanta skyline. Today marked a new chapter in her journey, and she could feel the weight of anticipation in her chest. She was determined to turn the momentum from the board meeting into actionable change, but she knew the road ahead would not be easy. As she entered the high-rise, the familiar hustle and bustle of the office greeted her. Colleagues rushed past, their conversations blending into a symphony of ambition. Yet, beneath the surface, a tension lingered, a subtle reminder of the resistance they had faced. Vivian's mind raced with thoughts of the proposal and the upcoming presentation to the board. They had worked tirelessly to gather data, case studies, and compelling narratives, but now it was time to rise to the occasion. Vivian, Evelyn Carter's voice cut through the noise, and Vivian turned to see her colleague striding toward her, a determined look on her face. We need to talk, of course, Vivian replied, her heart quickening. Is it about the proposal? Evelyn nodded, leading Vivian to a quieter corner of the office. I just got off the phone with some of the board members. They're still skeptical, but I think we can turn this around if we play our cards right. Tell me more, Vivian urged, her mind already racing ahead. What are their main concerns? They're worried about the feasibility of our initiatives, Evelyn explained. They want to see a timeline and clear benchmarks for success. If we can demonstrate that these community engagement strategies can lead to measurable outcomes, we might win them over. Vivian took a deep breath, understanding the gravity of the situation. So, we need to present not just our vision, but a solid plan of action. Exactly, Evelyn affirmed. And I think we need to involve Marcus in this. His insights are invaluable, and he can speak to the community's needs in a way that resonates with them. The thought of bringing Marcus back into the fold filled Vivian with excitement. He had become an integral part of this journey, and she was eager to see him rise to the occasion. Let's do it. I'll reach out to him and see if he's available to meet today. As Vivian began drafting a message to Marcus, her phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced down to see a text from him, *ready to tackle the proposal today. I've got some ideas I want to share, Asterisk, a smile spread across her face as she typed back, asterisk, absolutely. Meet me at the office in an hour, asterisk. With renewed energy, Vivian and Evelyn convened a meeting room, laying out the framework for their proposal. They carefully crafted each section, ensuring that it addressed the board's concerns while highlighting the community's needs. The more they worked, the more Vivian felt a sense of purpose solidifying within her. This was about more than just business. It was about creating a legacy that could uplift those who had long been marginalized. An hour later, Marcus arrived, his presence filling the room with a palpable energy. "Hey, everyone," he greeted, a bright smile on his face. "What's the game plan?" Vivian gestured for him to sit, her excitement bubbling over. "We've been discussing how to strengthen our proposal for the board. They want to see a clear plan with measurable outcomes, and I thought your insights could help us shape that." Marcus nodded, his expression shifting from enthusiasm to contemplation. "I've been thinking about what we discussed last time, the importance of community engagement. But we need to go beyond just saying it. We need to show how it can work." "Exactly," Vivian agreed. "Let's outline specific initiatives that can be implemented and how we can measure their success." "What do you think would be impactful?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed in thought. "One idea could be a mentorship program that connects our employees with at-risk youth in the community. We can set clear goals, like the number of students mentored or the skills they gain, and track their progress." Vivian felt a thrill of excitement at the suggestion. "That's brilliant. It not only benefits the community, but also fosters a sense of connection among our employees. It would humanize our corporate image in a way that's tangible, and we could also establish partnerships with local organizations to provide resources for job training," Marcus continued. "If we can show the board how these initiatives can create a pipeline of skilled workers, it aligns perfectly with our company's goals." Evelyn's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "We can quantify the impact by tracking employment rates and success stories from participants. That's something the board will appreciate." As they brainstormed, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Vivian could feel the barriers that had initially divided them beginning to dissolve. They were no longer just a wealthy entrepreneur and a janitor. They were collaborators, united by a shared vision. In that moment, Vivian realized how much she had learned from Marcus. His insights challenged her perceptions and opened her eyes to the power of community. After hours of intense discussion, they finalized the proposal, ensuring that each initiative was backed by data and a clear implementation plan. The sense of accomplishment in the room was palpable as they reviewed their work one last time. "Okay," Vivian said, her heart racing at the thought of their upcoming presentation. "We're ready for this. We've got a solid plan, and we can present it in a way that resonates with the board." As they prepared to leave the meeting room, Marcus turned to Vivian, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. "I just want to thank you for believing in me. I've never had the chance to be part of something like this, and it means a lot." Vivian smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "You're not just a part of this, you're a vital piece of the puzzle. Your voice matters, and together, we can create change." With their spirits high, they left the meeting room, ready to face the board again. But as they stepped into the bustling office, the air shifted once more. Thomas Grayson stood near the entrance, flanked by a couple of other senior executives, his eyes narrowing as he caught sight of Marcus. Vivian's stomach dropped. She had hoped to avoid another confrontation, but it seemed fate had other plans. "Vivian," Thomas began, his tone dripping with condescension, "I see you've brought your special guest again." Marcus straightened, a defiant fire igniting in his eyes. "I'm here to contribute, Thomas. Whether you like it or not, my perspective is valuable. You may think that, but I assure you, the board isn't interested in feel-good stories," Thomas replied, his voice cold. "We need data and results, not emotional appeals." Vivian felt a wave of protectiveness wash over her. "That's exactly what we've prepared, Thomas. We're presenting a comprehensive plan that addresses the board's concerns while highlighting the importance of community engagement. And I hope you understand," Thomas continued, his gaze fixed on Marcus, "that this isn't just a charity project. We're running a business here." Marcus met his gaze, unyielding. "I'm not here to play charity. I'm here to show you the value of investing in people. If you keep dismissing the community, you'll eventually pay the price. The tension in the air was palpable as the two men faced off, and Vivian felt her heart racing. This was the reckoning they had anticipated, the moment where they would either bridge the gap or find themselves further divided. "Let's see how the board reacts," Thomas said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "But don't say I didn't warn you." As he turned away, Vivian felt a mix of fear and determination swirling within her. They were standing on the precipice of change, but the challenges ahead were daunting. Would the board be ready to embrace their vision, or would they cling to the old ways? With renewed resolve, Vivian took a deep breath, knowing their fight was far from over. Together, they would face whatever lay ahead, ready to challenge the status quo and forge a path toward a more inclusive future. And as they prepared for the presentation, she felt a sense of hope ignite within her. This was only the beginning. The day of the final presentation arrived, bringing with it an electric tension that hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Vivian Caldwell stood before the sleek glass doors of the boardroom, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She glanced at Marcus, who stood beside her, his tall frame exuding a quiet confidence that bolstered her own resolve. "You ready?" she asked, her voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. Marcus nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "More than ever. Let's show them what we've got." With a shared nod, they stepped into the boardroom, where the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The long, oval table was filled with the firm's senior executives, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Evelyn Carter sat at the head, her gaze encouraging as she gestured for them to begin. "Thank you all for being here today," Vivian started, her voice strong as she took her place beside Marcus. "Today, we're not just presenting a proposal. We're inviting you to be part of a transformative journey, one that bridges the gap between our firm and the communities we serve." As she spoke, she could feel the weight of the board's gaze upon them, as she was keenly aware of Thomas Grayson's presence at the far end of the table, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. Vivian pushed through her initial nerves, channeling the passion that had driven them to this moment. Marcus took a deep breath, stepping forward as he had practiced. "I want to share a vision with you today, a vision where our firm becomes a leader in community engagement, not just for the sake of profit, but because it's the right thing to do." Investing in the community can yield significant returns, both financially and in terms of brand loyalty. He shared statistics they had gathered, illustrating how companies that engaged authentically with their communities saw increased customer loyalty and improved employee satisfaction. The board members listened intently, some leaning forward as Marcus's words resonated. "People want to support businesses that care about them," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's not just about numbers. It's about creating lasting relationships based on trust and respect." Vivian felt a swell of pride as she watched Marcus speak. This was the moment they had worked so hard for, and it was unfolding beautifully. They had crafted a narrative that intertwined their insights and experiences, each point built upon the last, creating a compelling case for change. As the presentation progressed, Vivian felt a shift in the room's energy. Thomas's skepticism remained, but other board members began to engage with their ideas. Questions arose, but they were constructive, probing for clarity rather than pushing back out of fear. "Can you elaborate on how we'll measure success?" one board member asked, his brow furrowed in thought. "Absolutely," Vivian replied, eager to demonstrate their preparedness. "We've outlined specific benchmarks, including community engagement metrics, employee participation rates, and follow-up surveys to assess the impact of our initiatives. We want to ensure accountability and transparency throughout the process." As they continued, the atmosphere shifted even further. Vivian could see board members nodding along, their expressions softening as they began to grasp the potential for genuine change. Marcus's authenticity and passion were penetrating the walls that had long divided corporate interests from community needs. Finally, they reached the conclusion of their presentation. Vivian stood before the board, her heart racing. "In closing, we believe that investing in community engagement is not just a moral imperative, it's a strategic necessity. By embracing this vision, we can set our firm apart as a leader in corporate responsibility, ultimately driving both profitability and positive societal impact. With that, silence enveloped the room, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Vivian held her breath, waiting for the board's response. Thomas opened his mouth, and for a moment, she feared a rebuttal. However, Evelyn interjected, her voice steady and confident. "I believe we've seen enough evidence today to understand the value of this proposal. It's time to move forward, to embrace this opportunity for growth." The room erupted in murmurs of agreement, and Vivian felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thomas's expression shifted from skepticism to grudging respect. "I still have concerns, but I can see the potential in what you're proposing. If we can align this with clear financial goals, I'm willing to reconsider." As the board members discussed the next steps, a sense of camaraderie began to blossom. They were no longer divided. They were united in a shared vision for the future. Vivian and Marcus exchanged a glance, their hearts swelling with hope. Later that day, as they stepped out of the boardroom, the weight of the world lifted from Vivian's shoulders. "We did it," she exclaimed, a bright smile illuminating her face. "They're on board." Marcus grinned, disbelief evident in his eyes. "I can't believe it. We actually convinced them." Evelyn joined them, her expression proud. "You both did an incredible job. This is just the beginning, but we've laid a strong foundation for change." As they walked through the bustling office, a new energy filled the air. Colleagues greeted them with nods of approval, and whispers of excitement began to spread. Vivian felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. They had forged connections that transcended their differences. In the weeks that followed, the firm began implementing their proposed initiatives. The mentorship program launched, pairing employees with local youth, fostering relationships that bridged gaps in understanding and opportunity. The company partnered with community organizations to provide job training and resources, creating pathways for employment. Marcus found fulfillment in his work, seeing firsthand the positive impact their initiatives had on the community. His confidence blossomed as he took on leadership roles in the programs, inspiring others to join the cause. Meanwhile, Thomas Grayson, who had initially resisted the changes, found himself grappling with the evolving corporate culture. As the initiatives gained traction and the firm began to see tangible results, he realized that his narrow perspective had hindered not only the company's growth, but his own. Gradually, he began to engage more openly with the community, recognizing the value in what Vivian and Marcus had championed. As the firm flourished, Vivian felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years. She had taken a risk, but it had paid off in ways she could never have imagined. The initial loneliness that had clouded her life began to dissipate, replaced by genuine connections with her colleagues, her community, and with Marcus. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony of her office overlooking the vibrant city, Marcus turned to her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me, Vivian. You've changed my life." Vivian smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "No, thank you for teaching me the power of community. Together, we build bridges that will last." As they gazed out at the city, illuminated by the setting sun, Vivian knew they had not only created a path for change, but had also forged a lasting partnership that would continue to inspire others. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but they were ready to face them together. And so, in a world still grappling with prejudice and division, Bridges of Prejudice became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of collaboration, understanding, and the belief that every voice matters. What did you think of the story? Please leave your thoughts in the comments.